Salutations readers, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to talk about the Reddit Fantasy Book Bingo for the 2025 to 2026 board, and it's just a quick wrap up. So I'm going to try my best to give y'all some very quick reviews, or maybe try to do like a yes or maybe challenge for this, because honestly y'all, for the most part, should know my thoughts on all of these books except for one, and of course it's a movie because one of the prompts is about a non-book prompt. So yeah, let's just get right into it. On the first square, it was Knights and Paladins, and for that one, I read To Clutch a Razor by Veronica Roth. Yes, this was a sequel to Wind Among Crows, and it was a really good follow-up. Then the second prompt was Hidden Gem. Unfortunately, I did not read a book for this prompt, so we shall move on to the third one, which is published in the 1980s. And I read Wild Seed by Octavia E. Butler. Yes, however, caveat, check trigger warnings, content warnings, all that. First book in a new series, and I really enjoyed this one, even though it is quite dark and it's very weird. But I'm curious to continue on with the series. Prompt number 4 was High Fashion, and I read The Night Tiger by Yang-Chi Chu. Maybe. This one I think is a good story. However, the fact that there was incest in here makes it very hard to generally recommend. Prompt number 5 is Down with the System, and I read Palmerton Season by Tochi Onyebuchi, which I got as an ARC from Tor and also an ALC from A Billion Audio. Yes. Also, a novel that is a mixture between fantasy and noir, and I think it has a really strong direction, and I continue to enjoy Tochi Onyebuchi's adult works. Prompt number 6 is Impossible Places, which I read Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. No, this was a major miss for me, and to be quite honest, I don't think I'll be reading anything else by R.F. Kuang in the future. Prompt number 7 is A Book in Parts, which I read This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. Maybe? This was a grief horror novel, and to be quite honest, there's a lot of animal death in this one, so could recommend, but if you're sensitive to pet/animal death, pass on this one. Prompt number 8 is God and Pantheons, and I read Samadana by Akwaeke Emezi. Yes, this is a very solid young adult fantasy novel. It's not similar to Bitter or Pet at all. It is very much unique, and I think more people should read this one. Prompt number 9 is Last Book in a Series, and I read The Lotus Empire by Tasha Shiri. Yes, if you loved reading The Jasmine Throne and The Oleander Sword, you're definitely going to continue on with this series to read the third and final book, and this book stuck the landing. Prompt number 10 is Book Club or Read Along book, and I read Changing All Stars by Nana Kwame Ejebrenya. Hell yes. Strong dystopian novel that is similar to The Hunger Games, except that you are following incarcerated folks, and it is a strong take regarding abolition. Definitely a must read. Next is the 11th prompt, and it's about parents. And for this one, I read The Memory of the Ojisi by Moses Osei-Utomi. Yes, if you have read The Lives of the Ajongo and The Truth of the Eleke, definitely continue on with this series with the third and final book. It stuck the landing for the most part. However, I was a little bit disappointed about the thematic message for this one, and especially since I really enjoyed the first novella in this series. Prompt number 12 is Epistolary, and I read The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. Hell yes. If you're here for some historical horror novel featuring vampires and indigenous revenge, this is the story for you, especially if you were a fan of Sinners. Prompt 13 is an easy prompt where you read the newest release. In this case, it's a book that was published in 2025, and I read A Mouthful of Dust by Nevo. Yes, if you've been a fan of the Singing Heal cycle, this installment is no different than any other of the installments. I really appreciate this one, and I continue to read more in this series. Prompt 13 is Author of Color, and I read Chlorine by Jade Song. Also, yes, I'm here for some weird literary horror kind of novels. And also, this was really cool. It's a queer coming of age story as well. It was a perfect blend of like different kind of like literary subgenres that I'm always interested in. So yeah. Prompt 15 is small press or self-published. I did not read anything to fulfill this prompt, so we shall move to the 16th prompt, which is biopunk. And I read A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. No. Unfortunately, this sequel to The Tainted Cup highly disappointed me, and to be quite honest, I don't recommend it. I already have a dedicated video on this one, and I don't think I need to repeat all my qualms about it. Prompt 17 is Elves and Dwarves, and I read The Orc and Her Bride by Lila Gwen. Maybe. This one I did enjoy. I think the reading experience was pretty solid. However, I don't really find it to be quite a memorable read for me, but the romance itself was pretty nice, so no complaints for me. Prompt 18 is LGBTQIA plus protagonist, and I read Don't Sleep with the Dead by Neve Vo. Yes, if you read The Chosen the Beautiful and you enjoyed it, I definitely recommend this sequel novella. However, if you did not read The Chosen the Beautiful, or you tried to and you weren't quite a fan of it, I do recommend maybe trying to read that one first before checking this one out, because I was genuinely a little bit confused with certain things because I did not actually finish reading The Chosen the Beautiful, so I was confused with this novella. However, it's still a really good novella, and I still recommend it. Prompt 19 is to read 5 short stories. I went with a short story collection called Seasons of Glass and Iron, stories by Amal Al-Multar. Yes, this is a very cohesive short story collection by Amal Al-Multar that was written throughout her writing career, and regarding any short story collection, I appreciate cohesiveness, whether it's in themes, tone, writing style, messaging, what have you, and Amal Al-Multar just did her job. Prompt 20, Stranger in a Strange Land. I read To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monica Blackgoose. Yes, even though I wasn't quite wowed away by this particular fantasy novel, I still think it was a solid start to a series, and especially if you're looking for fantasy books written by and also following, written by an indigenous author and also following an indigenous main character. Prompt 21 is to recycle Bingo Square. Don't really remember which Bingo Square I recycled, but I went with Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle. Yes, very absurd. My first time ever reading a Chuck Tingle horror novel, and I really like the fact that how just weird it was. It was cosmic horror-y, and I'm not really usually a fan of cosmic horror, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. Prompt 22 is to read a cozy sci-fi or fantasy novel, and I went with Brood with Love by Shelley Page. Yes, this one was a really enjoyable young adult romantic novel, and it was witchy, which is not usually the kind of mythical beings that I particularly enjoy or want to read, but this was a really fun one, and I think the character arcs and their growth was very believable. Prompt 23 is to read a book with a generic title, and I went with Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Yes, this is a neo-noir historical novel, fantasy horror, where we're dealing with vampires, Aztec vampires, actually vampires of all kinds, but specifically Aztec vampires. I thought this was very fast-paced, it was really well written, the characters were so engaging, I thought the plot was also really well written. Everything you could ever want, honestly, fantasy horror novel, especially with vampires, and also the fact that this is neo-noir makes it even way more interesting for me. Prompt number 24 is to basically consume sort of media that is not a book, and I went with Sinners 2025. Of course, I had to watch the phenomenon that is Sinners 2025 that took over the summer and was nominated for so many awards in the Oscars, didn't win as many, and I'm still mad about that. However, as a movie itself, it is so good, so great. The music great, the score is great, the casting was great, the performances were great, everything about this was great. And if you have not watched it already, and you're not really a fan of horror, I'm sorry that you were not able to watch this greatness. And then prompt number 25 is to read a book with pirates, and I did not read anything for this prompt. Anyways, that's it. That is the wrap up. Thank you all for joining me here. If you like it, like the video. If you like it, comment down below. How did you fare in this round of the Reddit bingo? Made this far in the video, you're not sure what to say, but you want to leave me an emoji to let me know you're here. You gotta leave me like the 8-ball emoji down in the comments down below if you made this far, right? Anyways, thank you again for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye.